Hello and welcome to Diecast Diaries. I'm Dan and welcome back to my review of the Matchbox Battle Kings range. In this video we're going to be having a look at the remaining 8 models from the Battle Kings range, as well as having a look what happened to some of the castings after they disappeared from the Matchbox catalogues in 1981. The first model, probably my least favourite one from the entire range. It was just called the Missile Launcher. Straight away you can see it's an extremely unusual looking vehicle. What I did find out recently is there was actually an earlier version of this one, so in the kind of metallic green, similar to a lot of the earlier tanks, but it does seem to be extremely rare. This is by far the most common version of it. This vehicle, as I say, you can see straight away it's clearly a made-up one. I think one reason for its inclusion was that it was a vehicle that Matchbox did as part of their futuristic Adventure 2000 range, which were all kind of a range of sort of science fiction type vehicles. The ones in that range, the most common one is like an avocado green colour, but there is also a metallic blue one as well. But yeah, the Battle Kings one is this one in the kind of olive green. The actual vehicle, I think as a futuristic science fiction type one, I quite like. It's quite chunky. I quite like all the details on it. As a military vehicle, clearly what's supposed to be like a current military vehicle, I can't say I find it terribly convincing. I think that's why it's probably my least favourite. Having said all that, it does have a couple of very nice working features. So first of all, as you drive it along, the radar spins round. And then when you pull this little lever at the back, you've got these 2 hatches that pop open. So you've got spare missiles carried on the side and a pop-up launcher, which does actually swivel from side to side as well. Now, I seem to remember, clearly I've obviously had a go with this in the past, I seem to remember it not working terribly well, but I had a go with it just before I did the video and I was quite pleasantly surprised at how effective it was. So I'll just ping it off, it's a little bit tricky. There we go. And that has flown over to the other side of the room. So yeah, far more effective than I clearly gave it credit for. But yeah, overall, it's an extremely odd looking vehicle. But yeah, if you can find the metallic green version, then yeah, it's certainly worth getting. It's definitely the rarest one. And as I say, it's probably the only proper variation that I don't actually have. But yeah, so that's the missile launcher. I'll just fold those back up. A little, oh, you pull the latch out, that's it, fold it in, and there we go, that's the missile launcher. The second vehicle, it's another really random one for Matchbox to do. It's a Dutch DAF YA126 Army Ambulance. Now this would have been a current service vehicle in service with the Dutch Army, but yeah, an extremely random one for Matchbox to do, and this was one of the castings that was unique to the Battle Kings range, so it's not one that they would be able to do in any kind of other colours. It is a military vehicle, so it's not one they could really do in any kind of civilian colour schemes. Why Matchbox chose this, I really don't know. It wouldn't have been a common sight at all, unless you lived in Holland, really. The ironic thing with this is that there was actually a proper ambulance version of the DAF YA126, which had like the sort of boxy type rear body, but still it looks pretty good. This is the kind of basic truck version. So yeah, it is a real vehicle. One clever feature of the real vehicle is that the spare wheels mounted on both sides are mounted freely so that they spin, and it means that the vehicle can't get beached if it's sort of going over rough terrain. There was also a larger truck that DAF made for the Dutch Army that had the same feature, so it's quite a clever little idea, that. The actual model is really nice. It's really well done, and the top does come off, so it's like an open top vehicle. All metal, apart from the plastic windscreen frame, and the brush guard at the front is plastic. Obviously the top is plastic as well. But yeah, it's one of my favourites from the range, this. I think simply, partly because it's a very nicely executed model, but also because it's just such an unusual one for Matchbox to have done. So that's, as I say, a Dutch Army DAF YA126 Army Ambulance. So pop that there. This next one is a reused casting from the Super Kings range. In the Super Kings range, it was known as the Hercules mobile crane. In the Battle Kings range, it's just known as military mobile crane. I do believe it is a made-up casting. It looks pretty plausible, it has to be said, unlike some other Matchbox vehicles. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it is just a made-up vehicle. Now, unfortunately, this does come, or it should come, with like a black sort of pincer type attachment that fits over the crane hook so it can pick up certain loads. This was bought second-hand years ago and obviously unboxed. So, of course, as that's not properly attached to the vehicle, it's one of the first things to go missing. But other than that, it's a nice model. So it obviously extends up, and the boom extends out as well. I'll slow it down so it can be seen. So the black bit there is plastic, but the rest of it's all metal. Obviously, it rotates 360 degrees. And then you've also got these plastic stabilizers, which come out as well. Obviously, this is all absolutely identical to the civilian version. That was done in yellow. But yes, that's the military mobile crane. It's often shown on packaging in conjunction with one of the following models, but unfortunately, as mine's missing the pincer attachment, I can't sort of pose it with it. But I'll show you what I mean in a minute. So I'll just put that to one side, fold in the stabiliser. So that's the military mobile crane. This is the vehicle I was referring to, and this is actually another reused casting from the Super Kings range. It's the aircraft transporter. And yeah, as I say, on the back of the artwork, in fact, I've actually got the box for this, or I say I have, it's actually in pretty bad condition. There we go. And you can see that's the attachment there that it should have. So unfortunately, I'm not able to kind of recreate the pose on the back of this picture here. But yeah, if I can find a cheap version of the civilian one had the same black plastic bit. I'd like to try and get it just to complete mine. But yeah, that's what it's missing. So yeah, this is the box for the aircraft transporter. So, as I say, it was another reused casting from the Super Kings range. Super Kings actually did two versions of this, one in silver, which I actually have here, and one in kind of a dark red colour. This one, unfortunately, the plane is missing its wings, but it was a recent purchase from a local antique centre, and it cost me £3. So I thought, the fact it's missing its wings, it was still worth getting. I would say also that these two versions, the silver one and the red one, technically could also count as military vehicles because it's the same plane on the back and it's still got the missiles underneath the sort of framework here. So the plane in question is, again, I suppose, a bit of a random one for Matchbox to do. It's an Alpha Jet. That was a joint German and French built aircraft. It was a jet train. I think it is actually still in service. It's actually what the French equivalent of the Red Arrows, the Patrouille de France, use. So it detaches from it. It's all plastic, the plane. One reason I'm thinking Matchbox might have done it is, of course, they had an extensive range of plastic kits. And I know that they did an Alpha Jet as part of that. Again, it still begs the question why they chose that. It was quite a large range of aircraft they did. There's certainly other ones they could have picked. But yeah, the other thing that's unusual about it is the markings they've chosen for it. First of all, they're American markings. Secondly, they're actually pre-1942 markings. So when the Americans first entered World War II, that's the marking that their aircraft would have had. And the red centre was very quickly deleted to avoid any confusion with the Japanese rising sun. I mean, look, admittedly, it does make for quite eye-catching markings on the plane. But it is at least pleasing that it is a real type of aircraft. I'll just take the wings off, put it there. The vehicle, of course, completely made up. Having said that, it's always been one that I've kind of liked. I've always kind of quite liked the sort of overhanging cab at the front. The style of vehicle, I think, has just always really appealed to me. It's quite interesting. It does actually have a real number plate at the front. It'll be interesting to see what that vehicle actually was. But yeah, really kind of really odd-looking vehicle, really. But as I say, I really like that. So just pop the plane on the back, and then the wings just slot in here on the sides. Put that in there like that. So that's the military aircraft transporter. Now this next vehicle, I'd always thought was an alteration of an existing Super Kings model, but I don't think it is. So it's the artillery truck with field gun. And you can see, first of all, with this one, it's actually in a noticeably darker green than any of the others. But yeah, I think I thought it looked very similar to, there was a yellow racing transporter that Matchbox did in the Super Kings range. It was a 6-wheeled vehicle, kind of had a similar looking cab. Then it had like a sort of clear orange top and obviously a ramp at the back, and had one of the smaller size Matchbox racing cars went in the back. But having had a look at them recently, it's clearly a different casting. So I'm thinking this must be one that's unique to the range. It's quite an unusual looking vehicle. It does actually look a little bit like, there's a Czech built truck, Tatra, that's used by various militaries, and it does kind of have a bit of a similar look to that. It's not exact, so I do think it is a vehicle that Matchbox have made up. They've reused the gunner figure from the half track, so it's got like the American soldier with his 50 caliber. I think it looks really good. Sort of, you've got a lot of military trucks that have like this open hatch on the top, and of course you've got the removable plastic top, and it's actually got, I think this will be the shell for the gun. Unfortunately, only one. I'll just drop it out of the bag. Oh, there we go. So there we go, that's one shell that I've got for the gun. I'll just move it to one side. The gun, incidentally, is quite clearly a British 25-pounder. Really widely used field gun from the Second World War. Also saw a lot of service post-war as well. The framework of the gun and the shield is metal. The barrel, unfortunately, is plastic, hence why I think it's been moulded in black. But quite similar to a lot of toy field guns of this era, from the likes of Britain's, Dinky, etc. It's got a firing function. So I'll just arm it like that. You tend to drop the shell, which will get the right way around, in the barrel like that, and then I'll aim it at the wall here. Whoa, there we go. That's pinged right back and actually off the table. So that works pretty well, to be fair. So that's the artillery gun, artillery truck and field gun. Let's have another look at the truck. So you can see it's just got an open backed compartment. Yeah, it's quite an unusual looking truck, but it doesn't look too bad. As I say, it looks sort of fairly plausible. And then you've got the big sort of tow hook at the back for towing the field gun. So I'll just pop the cover back on. But yeah, I was quite surprised. As I say, I'd always thought it was an alteration of an existing casting, but it would appear possibly not. We'll just attach it to its gun now. Now this is another one that I've got the box for, which is here. Now, unfortunately, with some of the larger ones, it tended to just be this same picture that they repeated. So unfortunately, not all of the vehicles got their own unique dramatic artwork like a lot of the others did, which is a shame. But it tends to be a feature of the ones that are in the larger boxes like this. But there you go. So you see artillery truck and field gun. It says detachable canvas type roof and rotating machine gun. The field gun elevates and fires. But yeah, quite a nice one, that. So that's the artillery truck and field gun. I'll just move that to one side. I will retrieve the shell shortly. And then we have another reused casting from the Super Kings range. And this was just called the Army Fuel Tanker. It's a vehicle that appeared in quite a few different guises in the Super Kings range in various different petrol company liveries. This one was also just put in US Army colours, which is appropriate. It is an American Ford truck. It's actually a Ford LTS. One of those where whether the US Army ever actually use these or not is debatable, but it certainly looks nice, certainly looks plausible, and similar to the normal range one. You've got the opening bonnet. Just try and, there we go. You can see the engine there. And then you've got, try and get these detached, there we go. There's the cab. So it's exactly the same as the one from the Super Kings range, but just done in a nice army green, and the plastic bits sort of picked out in black rather than chrome. Obviously makes it look much better. And then the trailer, the tank part is plastic, but the chassis is all metal. This bit at the back's all plastic. But you've got the fold down wheels, so it stands up, and you've actually got detachable rubber pipes along each side, which can come off and connect to the pump works here. I'll just fold the wheel back up and reattach it. There we go. That's quite a nice one. And that's another one that I've actually got the box for, which is here. But again, as I say, they've just reused that same picture again, which, as I say, is a bit of a shame, but that's the box for it. Then the last couple of vehicles were quite unusual ones for Matchbox to do. So the first one, it's quite a cool looking one, it's another one of my favourites. This was just called the self-propelled Hawk launcher. Now the Hawk in question, it's a type of surface-to-air missile, so it is a real missile and this is a real vehicle. Hawk stands for homing all the way killer. I'm guessing someone really wanted to call the missile Hawk and then just had to think of words that it could possibly stand for. So it's a genuine surface-to-air missile. It is one that is actually still in service with some countries. It could be mounted on a static launcher, a launcher towed behind a vehicle, or in this case, this is an M727 launcher vehicle. It was a vehicle genuinely used by the US Army. But yeah, really unusual vehicle again for Matchbox to choose, but quite a cool one. And again, this is another one that has a working feature. And again, it's another one that, whoa, there we go. I'll just retrieve that missile from the other side of the room. It's another one that I think, due to the size of the missiles, I think simply just thought these would be too heavy to effectively fire. But as it turns out, that's not the case. I'll just reattach that. Ooh, it seems to be quite keen to fire off again. I'll leave that. But yeah, that's another real favourite of mine, that one. As I say, quite an unusual vehicle for Matchbox to do. So that's the self-propelled Hawk launcher. Park that on the front there. And then for the last one, we're actually leaving vehicles behind and taking to the air with the Cayman Sea Sprite helicopter. Now, I've mentioned a number of times with some of these models that Matchbox kind of picked really random subjects, and this is another one. Cayman Sea Sprite is not a very well-known helicopter at all. It's an American helicopter, but you know, even there, it's not a well-known helicopter at all. The other reason why it's kind of quite unusual is it's actually a naval helicopter. It was only ever built as a naval helicopter, mainly used for anti-submarine duties. And why Matchbox picked this, there are numerous other helicopters that they could have picked. Really don't know. I'm pleased that they did. It's actually one of my favourite helicopters. It's one I kind of always liked. And Matchbox have actually, apart from the colour scheme obviously, the real one would have been in kind of a midnight blue scheme, they've actually done it really well. So features of the real helicopter, you've got the sort of sonar under the nose there. This detail on the side here is actually where the sonar buoys would be fired out that land in the water for obviously detecting submarines. They've correctly given it 4 rotor blades and a 4-bladed tail rotor. Proportions look really good. Wheels at the front, wheel at the part wheel and the tail boom, all correct. And even obviously the real one doesn't have missile launchers like this one's got, but they even look quite similar to the torpedo that the real one would have carried on the side. So yeah, it's a very unusual one for Matchbox to choose. This casting, this would be the only appearance of the casting in this form with wheels. But later on in the 80s, and I think into the very early 90s, this very same casting was reused, but instead of wheels, it was given really odd-looking plastic floats. Just makes the helicopter look even weirder. It's certainly not something that the real Sea Sprite in any form was ever fitted with. So yeah, it was actually quite a long-lived casting. But obviously in this guy's Matchbox mean it to be a kind of anti-tank helicopter and attack helicopter sort of thing. And of course, it has 2 working missile launchers. So I'll just fire one of them. There we go. So I'll just pick that up here. So again, you know, not too bad. Certainly more effective than I remember. So that's what the missiles look like. And they just slot into the launcher and clip into place. So that's it. So that's the Matchbox Battle Kings Cayman Sea Sprite helicopter. As I say, yet another random choice for Matchbox to do. But as I say, again, quite nicely done. And all the fuselage is all die-cast again. It's only the launchers, and obviously the rotors and the tail rotor that are plastic. So it's another kind of like nicely weighty model. So that's it for Matchbox Battle Kings. As I say, the range came to an end in 1981. And after that, they disappeared from the Matchbox catalogue. One thing, despite the apparent success of the range, one thing I've always found a bit unusual is the fact that there was never anything produced to go alongside the Battle Kings range. So whereas other ranges got things like play sets and play mats, for Battle Kings there was nothing, it was just the models. Now in relation to play sets, I can kind of understand it. Play sets tended to be more for like the super fast size vehicles, the sort of smaller size range. Obviously Battle Kings, with them using a lot of Super Kings type models, they're a much larger sort of tight range. So maybe a playset would just simply have been too big. But you'd have thought, given how well Matchbox had done playmats in the past, like the one that I covered in my Sea Kings video, and obviously with playmats, I'd like to think being relatively easy to produce, one Matchbox could have done one of those, maybe depicting a battlefield with maybe a roadway going across it, some craters, maybe a couple of like nice colourful fiery explosions or something like that. But yeah, unfortunately, they didn't do anything for the Battle Kings range. It was just the vehicles. Matchbox would resurrect the Battle Kings name all the way forward in 2006, but that was for some sets of vehicles, smaller size ones, some of which were military ones like the Abrams tank and the Humvee. Other ones were kind of just random vehicles from the normal lineup in military colours. It bears absolutely no resemblance to this Battle Kings range anyway, it's simply reusing the name. But as I mentioned at the start of the video, that's not quite where the story ends. Similar to Matchbox Sea Kings, sometime in, I'm guessing, the early 2000s, and again, I've not been able to find a date, some of the castings from the Battle Kings range were reused by the Chinese company Rich Rainbow. Now, unlike the Sea Kings, it does appear that only 8 of the Battle Kings castings were reused. I actually have one of the boxes here. So you can see it's got Rich Rainbow there. It classes them as 1:76 scale. And they were known as military force. Quite randomly, they chose a German World War II, looks like a Marder 3 tank destroyer on the side, which is a very random vehicle to pick. I think someone just picked the first tank picture they found. But on the back, it shows you the models that they released. Now, there's 2 things that are unusual about this. First of all, you've got 7 of the kind of smaller size models that would all fit in this size box. And then you've got the artillery truck and field gun. To me, it just seems a little bit odd that they decided to, instead of doing one of the other tanks that they hadn't done, like the Sherman or the M48, they've decided to do the artillery truck and field gun, which of course would have necessitated a much bigger size box. So that seems quite odd. The second thing is the colour schemes that these appear in. I'm guessing they must be pre-production ones because they bear absolutely no resemblance to any of the colour schemes that I found any of them in. Now, again, similar to the Battle Cruisers range, which was the Sea Kings equivalent that Rich Rainbow brought out, they've not been the easiest ones to find. I've managed to get 4 of the range, which I've got here. But yeah, they've not been easy ones to track down at all. eBay searches have come up kind of short. The trouble is, military force, that term's been used by a number of diecast companies to describe their range of military vehicles. So you type that in on an eBay search, for example, and it brings up all kinds of stuff. These do seem to have also been sold under the branding of SUTC. Now, SUTC stands for Shanghai Universal Toy Company. They do appear to be exactly the same models. They do have the SUTC logo on the front, and it's obviously meant to look like the Matchbox logo, as it's kind of black writing on a white background with like a orange and yellow border. But the models themselves do appear to be the same. The boxes for those seem to just be like a dark green all over. I've seen pictures of those online. I've never found any actually in any shops or anything like that. So the ones I've got are all branded as Rich Rainbow Military Force. But yeah, one pleasing thing about them is they tended to do them in quite realistic colour schemes. So this is the King Tiger. And straight away you can see it's in a much better looking colour scheme than either of the Battle Kings ones. It is actually a colour that King Tigers wouldn't have appeared in. This kind of steel grey colour is kind of more used on German tanks in like the early part of World War II. And it's, as you can probably see on here, it's a very glossy finish. Matchbox also, Rich Rainbow rather, also decided to pick out some of the details. I'm not sure that it would have been bright yellow, but it's not bad, and it's got nice markings, certainly authentic markings. The other obvious difference is they decided to replace the generic tank commander figure with the gunner figure from the American half track. The only problem with that being, of course, he's American, which looks a little bit out of place on a King Tiger. But it's a nice touch, as I say. At least it saves having the generic tank commander. And again, similar to Battle Kings, with the exception of the gun barrel, which unfortunately has suffered in the past. It needs a little bit of work. It did get broken and it has been repaired quite a while ago, but also needs some more work. Apart from the gun barrel, it's all metal again, which is very nice. So yes, that's the Rich Rainbow King Tiger. The next one I've got is in a really imaginative colour scheme. So it's the M3A1 half track, but they've actually decided to do it in a captured German colour scheme. And I say that they really seem to have gone to town. It's quite an unusual camouflage scheme. It's sort of kind of similar to some camouflage schemes the Germans use. Of course, you've got your German crosses on the side. They've actually picked out the winch cable, given it kind of a unit insignia on the side. And what I think is a really nice touch is they've actually given it a proper Wehrmacht number plate with the WH on it, which I think is a nice attention to detail. Of course, the fact that it's got the same gunner figure, who is an American, kind of rather spoils it, but you can forgive it for this one, as that's what the original vehicle would have come with. But yeah, I think that's quite an imaginative use of this casting to do it as a captured German vehicle. That's the M3A1 half track. Then we've got the M551 Sheridan in a kind of a quite unusual grey, green and brown scheme, and again quite a glossy finish. Now this one, at least, the gunner figure with his 50 cal does at least look quite suitable, as obviously first of all it's an American tank, and secondly these were armed with 50 calibers on the top of the turret. But yeah, I think I probably prefer the second release of the Matchbox Sheridan in the green and khaki scheme to this one, although one good thing with this one and with the King Tiger, although the gun barrels are still plastic, they have at least done them in the same colour as the rest of the vehicle, which helps them to blend in. But yeah, it's as I say, it is quite a nice one. So I do like the Sheridan, and as I say, it was quite an unusual vehicle for Matchbox to have done. That's that. And then the last one I've got is the self-propelled Hawk launcher. So it was quite a random selection of vehicles that Rich Rainbow decided to reproduce. They've obviously picked out the headlights on this one. Again, I quite like the camouflage scheme. It's got US Army on the door, but again, you can see it's a really glossy finish. The missiles look a lot better, I think, than the bright orange ones from the Matchbox one. I couldn't seem to get the launcher to work though, so although it looks like it might, I've not had too much of a fiddle with it. I don't want to bend it back too much. So that's the last of the ones I've been able to get, unfortunately. Now, one good thing with them is that when I have found them, and they've come from various places, one came from a military museum, a couple came from a couple of different military vehicle shows, and one came from a car show. So they have come from sort of similar-ish sorts of places. When I have found them, they have been cheap. None of them have cost me more than £5, and this one actually cost me, I think, £2.50. They're all boxed as well, which is nice. So, but yeah, not an easy range to come across at all. But so similar with the battle cruisers, if you do see any of these, they do make a really nice addition to the Battle Kings range. As I say, the castings are absolutely identical, and thankfully, as I say, they've finished them in the same way with them being all metal again. It would have been quite easy to include a lot more plastic. So yeah, really nice additions to the range. So that really is it for Matchbox Battle Kings. So thanks for bearing with me over these past two videos. Hope you've enjoyed it. Was this a range you like yourselves? As I say, it's one that's always appealed to me. I will say this, though, that out of all the various military ranges that were kind of around in the 70s, so you've got, as well as obviously Battle Kings, you've got Dinky had a range, Corgi, Lone Star, Britons, Crescent Toys, and all of them. Although all of those, of course, were meant as toys, I would say the Battle Kings range are the most toy-like of all the ranges, and I think it's probably due to the use of colour. There's more use of plastic. The boxes are obviously far more appealing than any of the others. So as I say, I do think those ones kind of come across as toys more than any of the others, but I really like them. They're not, the actual models themselves aren't too big, so it's not like they take up a huge amount of space. And it's, unless you're going mad with all the different variations in shades of colour that I mentioned in the first video, there aren't too many different models to collect. So it is a nice one, but I'll leave it there for now. That's part 2 of my Battle Kings review. So please do like, share, subscribe and comment, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye.